Welcome to the 11th episode of the Reality Transurfing Fundamentals Series. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most subtle yet powerful forces that shape our relationships and our personal happiness. Balance in relationships, eliminating dependent relationships. The quality of our relationships often determines the quality of our lives. Yet many of us struggle with patterns of dependency, attachment, and control that ultimately undermine the very connections we value most. In this episode, we'll explore how the universal principle of balance applies to our relationships, why dependent relationships inevitably create problems, and how to cultivate healthier, more fulfilling connections based on freedom and unconditional love. Let's begin with a fundamental principle. Everything in nature seeks balance. This law of balance is not just a physical law, it operates in the energetic world of our thoughts, emotions, and most importantly, our relationships. Whenever we create an imbalance, forces arise to restore equilibrium. In relationships, this often manifests as conflict, disappointment, or the gradual erosion of connection. Consider how this principle works in nature. When pressure builds in one area of a system, it seeks release. When one species becomes too dominant in an ecosystem, counterbalancing forces emerge to restore harmony. The same principle applies to the delicate ecosystem of human relationships. Balance is not static, it's a dynamic, ever-adjusting state. In healthy relationships, this dynamic balance allows for growth, change, and mutual evolution. Each person maintains their individuality while participating in the shared experience of the relationship. But when this balance is disrupted through dependency, idealization, or attempts to control, problems inevitably arise. What causes imbalance in relationships? The answer lies in the concept of dependent relationships. Connections where excess potential is created through attachment, idealization, or the need to possess or control another person. When we place someone on a pedestal, idolize them, or make our happiness dependent on their actions, we create a distortion in the energy field. This excess potential inevitably summons balancing forces, which often act in ways that seem to sabotage the very relationship we cherish. Dependent relationships can take many forms: emotional dependency, where you feel you can't be happy without someone; validation dependency, where you need another's approval to feel worthy; security dependency, where you rely on someone else to feel safe in the world; identity dependency, where you don't know who you are without the relationship; savior dependency, where you believe someone will solve all your problems; or perfection dependency, where others must be flawless to deserve your love. Each of these patterns creates excess potential, an energetic imbalance that puts strain on the relationship. The more intense the dependency, the stronger the balancing forces that will eventually arise. When we examine these dependency patterns more closely, we can see that they all stem from a fundamental misunderstanding. We mistakenly believe that our sense of wholeness, security, or happiness must come from outside ourselves. This external focus creates a kind of energetic vacuum that pulls us out of our center and makes us vulnerable to the changing tides of relationships. It's like building your house on shifting sand rather than solid ground. Sooner or later, the foundation will be compromised. But why do we form these dependent patterns in the first place? Often they're rooted in our earliest experiences of attachment. As children, we were genuinely dependent on others for survival, and this created deep neural pathways connecting safety and survival with external approval and care. These early patterns can persist into adulthood, even when they no longer serve us. Cultural messages also reinforce the idea that true love means completing each other, or becoming one, perpetuating the illusion that dependency is the natural state of intimate relationships. Let's look at how this works in practice. Imagine you fall deeply in love and begin to idealize your partner. You see them as perfect, essential to your happiness, and you can't imagine life without them. This intense focus and emotional investment create excess potential, an energetic pressure that must be released. The universe seeks to restore balance, and this often takes the form of misunderstandings, arguments, or even the end of the relationship. The more you cling, the more you risk pushing the other person away. Consider what happens energetically in this situation. Your excessive focus on the other person creates a kind of distortion in the field of reality. It's as if you're pulling too hard on a single thread in the fabric of life. This creates tension that must be released. The balancing forces may manifest in various ways. Perhaps you begin to notice flaws in the person you once idealized. Perhaps they begin to feel suffocated and pull away. Perhaps external circumstances arise that challenge the relationship. Or perhaps you experience internal conflict that diminishes your enjoyment of the connection. In each case, the universe is working to restore equilibrium, to bring your energy back into balance. This dynamic isn't limited to romantic relationships. The same principle applies to friendships, family relationships, and even professional connections. Whenever you make your sense of self-worth, happiness, or security dependent on another person, you hand over your power and invite imbalance. The result can be disappointment, resentment, or a cycle of neediness and withdrawal. In friendships, dependency might look like constantly needing reassurance about your place in the group, feeling devastated when friends make plans without you, or molding your opinions and preferences to match those of your friends. In family relationships, it might manifest as an inability to make decisions without family approval, feeling responsible for everyone's happiness, or difficulty establishing appropriate boundaries. In work relationships, dependency could appear as excessive need for validation from superiors, taking criticism too personally, or basing your professional identity entirely on others' opinions. There's a profound paradox at work in dependent relationships. The more desperately you cling to someone, the more likely you are to lose them. This occurs for several reasons. First, excessive attachment creates pressure. When someone feels they're responsible for your happiness or that you can't function without them, it becomes an emotional burden. This pressure often triggers a natural desire for space and freedom. Just as plants need room to grow, people need psychological space to flourish. When we crowd them with our needs and expectations, they instinctively pull back to reclaim their autonomy. This isn't because they don't care, but because the human spirit naturally resists confinement. Second, dependency distorts perception. When you idealize someone, you're not seeing the real person, but a projection of your own needs and fantasies. This inevitably leads to disappointment when the real person, with all their human flaws and complexities, emerges. Imagine painting an elaborate portrait based on a brief glimpse of someone's face. Then, upon seeing them in full daylight, you realize your painting bears little resemblance to reality. That's what happens with idealization. We create an image based on limited information and then feel betrayed when reality doesn't match our creation. Third, dependency creates fear, and fear generates negative energy. This negative energy manifests as jealousy, possessiveness, suspicion, or controlling behavior, all of which damage the connection and push the other person away. Fear has a distinct energetic signature that others can sense, even if unconsciously. It creates a heaviness in the relationship, replacing the lightness and joy that drew you together initially. Like a plant reaching toward sunlight, people naturally lean toward relationships that feel expansive and away from those that feel constrictive. Finally, dependency undermines respect. On some level, excessive neediness communicates a lack of confidence in yourself and a lack of trust in the other person's free choice to be with you. This erodes the foundation of mutual respect that every healthy relationship requires. Respect involves seeing someone as a separate, autonomous being with their own path and choices. When we cling to others out of dependency, we subtly communicate that we don't trust their sovereignty or their ability to make choices that honor the relationship. This lack of trust creates a crack in the foundation that widens over time. So, what's the solution? Unconditional love and inner freedom. Unconditional love is admiration without worship, care without the need to possess, and support without the need to control. It is a state of appreciation for another's presence in your life without making your well-being contingent on their actions or approval. When you love in this way, you generate positive energy, which carries you onto harmonious lifelines and attracts healthy, balanced relationships. Unconditional love doesn't mean accepting mistreatment or staying in harmful situations. Rather, it means loving from a place of inner freedom, where your core sense of worth and happiness comes from within, not from the relationship. This inner security allows you to love more genuinely, without the desperate need to control outcomes. It's the difference between saying, "I need you to complete me," and "I am whole, and from this wholeness, I choose to share my life with you." This kind of love has a light, spacious quality. It doesn't grab or clutch. It opens its hands and allows. It trusts life's flow and the natural unfolding of connections. It knows that true intimacy comes not from merging identities, but from two whole people choosing to walk alongside each other, sometimes close, sometimes with more space, but always with respect for each other's journey. From this place of inner freedom, you can appreciate others as they are, without trying to change them to fit your needs. You can enjoy their presence while respecting their separateness. And perhaps most importantly, you can allow relationships to evolve naturally, without forcing them into preconceived ideas of how they should be. When you release the need to control the form or outcome of a relationship, something magical happens. The relationship itself can breathe. It finds its natural rhythm and expression. Some connections will deepen, others may transform or even dissolve, but each will follow its authentic path rather than being forced into an artificial mold created by fear or attachment. This organic unfolding creates much more sustainable and satisfying connections than those maintained through clinging or control. How do you know if your relationships contain unhealthy dependency? There are some common signs to watch for: constant worry about losing the relationship, feelings of emptiness or loss of identity when apart, difficulty making decisions without the other person's input, neglecting other relationships or personal interests, emotional extremes based on the other person's behavior, fear of expressing your true thoughts or feelings, accepting mistreatment to maintain the connection, feeling responsible for the other person's emotions, jealousy, possessiveness, or controlling behavior, and persistent anxiety about the relationship status. Pay special attention to your emotional state. Dependent relationships often create a roller coaster of highs and lows. When things are going well, you feel elated, but when there's distance or conflict, you plunge into despair. This emotional volatility is a clear sign that you've placed too much of your well-being in someone else's hands. In balanced relationships, there's a steadier emotional tone. You can experience disappointment or sadness without feeling devastated. You can enjoy connection without euphoria. Your emotional baseline remains relatively stable because it's anchored in your relationship with yourself, not solely in your relationship with others. Also notice your thought patterns. In dependent relationships, your mind tends to orbit around the other person. What are they thinking? What are they doing? What does this message mean? Do they still care? These obsessive thought loops consume tremendous mental energy and pull you away from presence in your own life. In balanced relationships, you think of the other person with warmth and interest, but your thoughts aren't fixated or anxiety-driven. You maintain mental sovereignty even as you care deeply. If you recognize these patterns in your relationships, don't judge yourself harshly. Dependent patterns often develop from childhood experiences and cultural conditioning. The good news is that with awareness and practice, you can gradually shift toward healthier, more balanced connections. Each small step toward inner freedom creates ripples that transform the entire ecosystem of your relationships. But how do you move from dependency to freedom in your relationships? Here are some practical steps that you can begin implementing today, regardless of your current relationship status. First, recognize the signs of dependency. Notice when you feel anxious, jealous, or overly attached. Are you placing someone on a pedestal or making your happiness conditional on their behavior? Awareness is the first step to change. Become a compassionate observer of your patterns, watching without judgment as they play out in your thoughts, emotions, and actions. When you catch yourself in moments of dependency, pause and observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment. What fears or unmet needs might be driving your attachment? Often, dependency stems from deeper insecurities that have little to do with the current relationship. Perhaps you fear abandonment due to childhood experiences. Perhaps you doubt your own worthiness and seek constant validation. Perhaps you were taught that your value lies in being needed by others. By identifying these underlying patterns, you gain the power to address them at their root, rather than merely managing their symptoms. Second, release the need to possess or control. Remind yourself that true love is not about ownership or dependency, but about freedom and acceptance. Let your loved ones be themselves, and allow yourself the same freedom. This means accepting that people will make choices you don't always understand or agree with. It means respecting others' boundaries and personal journeys, even when they differ from your expectations. It means releasing the illusion that controlling someone's behavior will secure their love or presence in your life. Practice this release through regular reminders. I love name, and they are free to be themselves. My happiness doesn't depend on controlling the situation. I trust in the natural unfolding of this relationship. These thoughts help dissolve the excess potential created by attachment. With practice, you'll find that these reminders create a sensation of spaciousness and peace, replacing the contracted, anxious feeling of dependency. This release isn't a one-time event, but an ongoing process. Each day brings new opportunities to practice letting go. When your partner expresses an opinion different from yours, when your friend spends time with other people, when your child makes choices independently, each of these moments invites you to practice releasing control and honoring the other person's freedom. Over time, this practice becomes more natural, and you'll find joy in supporting others' autonomy rather than threatened by it. Third, focus on your own self-worth. Remember that your value does not depend on anyone else's approval or affection. The more you cultivate self-acceptance and inner peace, the less you will need to seek fulfillment outside yourself. This doesn't mean becoming self-centered or disconnected from others. Rather, it means establishing a strong inner foundation from which you can engage with others more authentically and generously. Develop practices that strengthen your connection to yourself. Meditation, journaling, creative expression, time in nature, or simply quiet moments of self-reflection. When you feel centered in your own worth, you'll approach relationships from a place of wholeness rather than need. You'll be able to give without depletion and receive without desperate attachment. You'll recognize that while relationships add tremendous value to your life, they aren't the source of your fundamental worth or happiness. This focus on self-worth requires honesty about the stories you tell yourself. Many of us carry narratives like, I'm not enough on my own, or no one could love the real me, or I need someone to complete me. These stories may be so familiar that they feel like truth, but they are merely interpretations, not reality. Begin to question these narratives. Where did they come from? Are they serving your highest good? What alternative perspectives might be more accurate and empowering? Fourth, practice gratitude and appreciation. Instead of focusing on what you lack or what you fear losing, appreciate the presence of others in your life as a gift, not a necessity. Gratitude dissolves excess potential and restores balance. It shifts your energy from scarcity to abundance, from fear to trust. Each day, acknowledge something you appreciate about your relationship without attaching expectations. I'm grateful for the laughter we shared today. Feels very different from, I need you to make me laugh to feel good. This subtle shift in perspective changes the entire energetic quality of the relationship. It transforms your connection from a source of potential disappointment to a source of ongoing appreciation. It releases the other person from the burden of fulfilling your needs and allows them to simply be themselves in your presence. Gratitude also helps you recognize the abundance that already exists in your life. When you focus on what you have rather than what you lack, you create a field of positive energy that naturally attracts more positive experiences. This abundance mindset makes you less vulnerable to fear-based attachment and more capable of loving freely. Fifth, avoid comparisons and conditions. As soon as you start comparing your relationships to others, or setting conditions like, if you loved me, you would, you create tension and imbalance. Let go of expectations and allow relationships to unfold naturally. Remember that each relationship has its own unique purpose and expression. What works for others may not be appropriate for you, and there's no universal template for how connections should be. When you catch yourself making comparisons or setting conditions, gently redirect your attention to the unique qualities of your relationship. Remember that each connection has its own purpose and rhythm. Some friendships are characterized by daily interaction, others by occasional deep conversations. Some romantic relationships thrive on adventure and passion, others on comfort and stability. Some family connections involve frequent gatherings, others more independence. There's no right or wrong pattern, only what authentically works for the individuals involved. Conditions are particularly damaging to relationships because they create a transactional dynamic rather than a freely given exchange. "I'll love you if," or "I'll stay as long as," introduces an element of contract rather than gift. True love isn't conditional. It's an ongoing choice to appreciate and support another person's well-being without demanding specific behaviors in return. This doesn't mean having no boundaries or standards, but rather approaching relationships with openness rather than rigid expectations. Sixth, embrace the role of a guest in the world. Remember, we are all guests in each other's lives. Give attention, respect, and freedom of choice without trying to run the show or make others responsible for your happiness. This guest mindset creates a beautiful lightness in relationships. Instead of demanding or assuming, you offer and request. Instead of expecting, you appreciate. This shift alone can transform the energy of your connections. When you approach relationships as a guest, you bring a quality of respect and gratitude to every interaction. Just as a considerate guest wouldn't rearrange the furniture in someone's home or demand that they change their routines, a considerate person doesn't try to remake others according to their preferences. This doesn't mean suppressing your needs or perspectives, but rather offering them with respect for others' autonomy, rather than as demands. The guest mindset also reminds us of the temporary nature of all relationships. Even our longest connections are, in cosmic terms, brief encounters. This awareness can inspire us to treasure the time we have with others instead of taking it for granted. It encourages us to focus on quality rather than longevity, on depth rather than possession. When we truly understand that we're guests in each other's lives, we approach relationships with both reverence and lightness. Let's also talk about the dangers of idealization. When you idealize someone, you project qualities onto them that may not exist. This creates a gap between reality and your expectations, and the universe will eventually debunk the myth through disappointment or disillusionment. The greater the idealization, the more painful the eventual meeting with reality. Idealization often follows a predictable pattern. Initial enchantment, where you're captivated by someone's positive qualities. Selective perception, where you notice only what confirms your idealized view. Projection, where you attribute qualities to them that reflect your needs and fantasies. Emotional investment, where your happiness becomes tied to this idealized image. Reality intrusion, where the person inevitably reveals aspects that don't fit your ideal. Disillusionment, where you feel disappointed, betrayed, or misled. And reaction, where you either adjust your perception or reject the person entirely. This cycle creates emotional turbulence and prevents authentic connection. Real love sees the whole person, flaws, contradictions, and all, and chooses to appreciate them anyway. It doesn't need the other to be perfect in order to value them deeply. It recognizes that human complexity is part of what makes relationships rich and meaningful. The antidote to idealization is clear seeing. This means observing others as they actually are, not as you wish them to be. It means being willing to acknowledge both their strengths and limitations without the need to exaggerate either. It means understanding that everyone is a work in progress, including yourself, and embracing the beauty of that ongoing evolution rather than expecting a finished, perfect product. The same dynamic applies when you focus intensely on what you dislike or fear in others. Your energy radiates at the frequency of your non-acceptance, and you attract more of what you don't want. If you're constantly worried about betrayal, for instance, you may unconsciously create situations that confirm this fear. Your vigilance for signs of betrayal creates a field of suspicion that can actually encourage the very behavior you fear, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. This doesn't mean ignoring genuine problems or staying in harmful situations. Rather, it means approaching challenges from a place of clear seeing and acceptance rather than fear or rejection. When you accept reality as it is, you gain the power to respond wisely rather than react defensively. You can address issues directly and make conscious choices about your boundaries and participation without the excess potential created by denial or resistance. Another aspect of balance in relationships involves the energy exchange of giving and receiving. In dependent relationships, this exchange often becomes distorted in one of two ways. Overgiving, where you constantly sacrifice your needs, give more than you receive, and build resentment. Or overtaking, where you expect others to fulfill your needs while giving little in return. Both patterns create imbalance and eventually trigger balancing forces. The overgiver burns out or becomes resentful, while the overtaker finds others gradually withdrawing their energy. Neither pattern is sustainable in the long term, and both create distortions in the relationship field that inevitably seek correction. Healthy relationships involve a natural, flexible flow of give and take. Sometimes you'll give more, sometimes you'll receive more. But over time, there's a sense of balance that feels right to both parties. This balance isn't about keeping score, it's about each person freely contributing from their authentic desires and receiving with gratitude. To restore balance in this area, honor your boundaries by paying attention to when giving feels energizing versus depleting. Express your needs clearly instead of expecting others to guess. Receive graciously, allowing others the joy of giving to you without diminishing their gifts. Give from abundance, offering your time, attention, and care from a place of genuine desire, not obligation. And release expectations by giving without demanding specific returns or recognition. When giving and receiving flow naturally, relationships develop a sustainable rhythm that nourishes everyone involved. There's an ease to the exchange, a sense that energy is circulating freely, rather than being hoarded or forced. This balanced flow creates relationships that energize rather than deplete, that support growth rather than stagnation. Family relationships often present unique challenges when it comes to dependency and balance. The deep history, shared genes, and cultural expectations can make it particularly difficult to establish healthy boundaries and release dependent patterns. Many of us learned our earliest relationship patterns in our families of origin, and these templates can powerfully influence our current interactions, often outside our awareness. Many people struggle with family dynamics where roles are rigid. Emotional enmeshment complicates boundaries. Cultural expectations reinforce dependency. Past patterns continue into adulthood, and guilt becomes a control mechanism. These patterns can be especially difficult to transform because they're reinforced by both personal history and cultural norms. If family relationships feel imbalanced or dependent, remember that you can love your family deeply while still establishing healthy boundaries. In fact, many family relationships actually improve when each person takes responsibility for their own emotional well-being. When you release the need to control family members or make yourself responsible for their happiness, you create space for more authentic and satisfying connections based on choice rather than obligation. Romantic relationships are particularly vulnerable to dependency because of the intense emotions involved. The early stages of romance often trigger a biochemical response similar to addiction, which can cloud judgment and foster dependency. The rush of dopamine, oxytocin, and other neurochemicals creates a natural high that can make the other person seem like the source of your happiness. The progression from infatuation to mature love typically involves several stages, from idealization through disillusionment and power struggles to either separation or a more stable commitment based on reality rather than fantasy. The transition requires releasing dependency and embracing the reality of your partner. This doesn't mean settling or lowering standards, it means loving the actual person rather than your idealized projection. Mature romantic love combines passion with friendship, excitement with stability, and desire with respect. It's a dynamic balance of closeness and autonomy, of shared experience and individual growth. It recognizes that love exists not in perfect alignment, but in the ongoing dance of two separate individuals choosing to build a life together while supporting each other's unique journey. Friendships also benefit from awareness of balance and dependency. In our social media age, there's often pressure to maintain numerous connections, which can lead to superficial relationships that lack depth or authentic exchange. Balanced friendships involve mutual respect for boundaries, reciprocal support, acceptance of change, freedom from expectations, and authenticity. True friendship has a quality of spaciousness. There's room for both connection and separation, for sharing and silence, for agreement and difference. Friends support each other without becoming responsible for each other. They enjoy their time together without demanding constant attention. They accept each other's growth and changes without feeling threatened by new directions or relationships. Work environments often contain inherent power imbalances that can complicate the quest for balanced relationships. Whether you're a leader, team member, or individual contributor, conscious awareness of dependency patterns can improve your professional interactions. Common workplace dependency patterns include approval dependency, rescuing behavior, authority fixation, conflict avoidance, and identity fusion. Creating healthier professional relationships involves respecting hierarchies without diminishing your worth, communicating directly rather than through manipulation or avoidance, taking appropriate responsibility without overextending, and maintaining professional boundaries while still being authentically engaged. When you bring consciousness to workplace interactions, you can navigate complex dynamics with greater ease and effectiveness. At the heart of all balanced relationships lies your relationship with yourself. When you depend on others for validation, direction, or emotional stability, you're trying to get externally what can only be sustainably generated from within. Building a strong self-relationship involves self-awareness, self-compassion, self-trust, self-responsibility, and self-care. When these elements are in place, you approach relationships from a foundation of wholeness rather than lack. This doesn't mean you never need others. Humans are inherently social beings, but it does mean you're not desperately seeking outside yourself for what you can only find within. From this foundation of inner security, you can form connections that enhance your life without becoming the source of your identity or worth. Healthy relationships are those that do not produce excess potential. They are built on mutual respect, freedom, and acceptance. Unconditional love, which does not support dependent relationships or create excess potential, is the rarest and most powerful form of connection. It is love without the need to possess, compare, or control. The characteristics of balanced relationships include mutual respect for boundaries, emotional responsibility, where each person manages their own emotions, freedom to be authentic, acceptance of growth and change, healthy interdependence with connection without merger. Effective conflict navigation, balance of giving and receiving, trust and reliability, support for individual pursuits and dreams, and joy and appreciation in the connection. These qualities create a relationship ecosystem where both people thrive. Energy flows smoothly without the buildup of excess potential that triggers balancing forces. There's a natural rhythm to the connection, an ebb and flow that respects both togetherness and separateness. This balanced dynamic creates relationships that last not through obligation or dependency, but through ongoing choice and mutual benefit. If you find yourself struggling with dependency, jealousy, or the urge to control, don't wage war on yourself. Accept your feelings, forgive yourself, and gently shift your focus back to self-love and acceptance. When you stop battling with yourself and others, energy is freed for genuine connection and growth. Remember that transformation isn't about perfection, but about progress. Each small step toward greater awareness and balance creates positive ripples throughout your relationship ecosystem. Transforming dependent patterns takes time. These patterns often developed as survival strategies in childhood or previous relationships. Approaching change with compassion, rather than self-judgment, accelerates your progress and prevents the excess potential that comes from perfectionism. Be patient with yourself as you learn new ways of relating. Celebrate each moment of awareness each choice for balance, each expression of unconditional love. These moments accumulate over time, gradually reshaping your relationship landscape. Some gentle approaches to transformation include making small, consistent shifts rather than dramatic overnight changes, celebrating progress instead of focusing only on what needs improvement, learning from setbacks without harsh self-criticism, surrounding yourself with supportive people who understand your growth journey, and having patience with the process, recognizing that deep patterns take time to reshape. Remember that transformation itself can become a source of excess potential if approached with desperate intensity. Trust in your natural evolution toward healthier connections and allow the process to unfold at its own pace. The universe supports your movement toward greater balance and harmony. You don't have to force or strain. Simply set your intention, take consistent small steps, and trust the natural unfolding of growth. As you cultivate balance in your key relationships, you'll notice a ripple effect throughout your life. Balanced relationships generate positive energy that influences your physical well-being, creative expression, professional success, and overall life satisfaction. The energy you previously invested in managing dependency or controlling others becomes available for creative projects, personal growth, and genuine service. When your relationships are free from excess potential, you conserve energy that was previously drained by dependency and drama. Make clearer decisions uncluttered by others' expectations or approval. Attract similar balanced connections through resonance. Experience more authentic joy in your interactions. Navigate life transitions with greater flexibility and resilience. And contribute more effectively to your communities and causes. Each balanced relationship becomes a stable point in your life's constellation, creating a network of support that doesn't drain your energy or create imbalance. Instead of relationships that pull you off center, you create connections that support your authentic path while allowing others the same freedom. This network of balanced relationships becomes a foundation from which you can explore, create, and contribute with greater ease and joy. In summary, balance in relationships is achieved by eliminating dependency, releasing the need to possess or control, and practicing unconditional love. When you let go of excess potential and restore equilibrium, you create space for authentic, joyful, and lasting connections. This balance isn't static, but a dynamic dance of connection and autonomy, of giving and receiving, of stability and growth. It's a state where relationships enhance your life without becoming its center. The journey toward balanced relationships isn't about perfection, but about awareness and gradual transformation. As you recognize dependency patterns, shift toward inner freedom, and cultivate unconditional love, your relationships naturally become sources of joy and growth rather than stress and depletion. Each step on this path not only improves your connections with others, but deepens your relationship with yourself, creating a virtuous cycle of increasing wholeness and freedom. In our next episode, we'll explore the unity of heart and mind, how aligning your inner world creates harmony in your outer reality. Until then, remember, love freely, accept yourself and others, and let balance be the foundation of all your relationships. The world of balanced, life-affirming connections awaits you, not as a distant ideal, but as a practical possibility available through conscious and consistent choices. As you move through your days, notice opportunities to release dependency, appreciate without attachment, and love without conditions. Each moment of balanced connection creates a new template for all your relationships, shifting you onto life tracks of greater harmony, fulfillment, and joy. Trust in this process and watch as your relationship landscape gradually transforms from a source of struggle to a source of genuine support and celebration.